Rahab was scared. No, more than that, she was terrified. She had felt terror before, but not this way. This was a terror that had a sliver of hope. She had been born into a cult nation who held worship services to their gods by killing babies and taking physical advantage of women and men, using them as toys for the guilty, lustful pleasures that powerful men and women would hold over them. She grew up thinking that those terrors were just a way of life, part of the cycle. She became a young woman believing there would be no hope in finding any other way of life. The Canaanite culture that worshipped sex, subjectivity, and proclaiming their truths was a dark lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. She had even learned to make a profit in it, building a career in the world's oldest profession. She clawed her way into living in some sort of veiled control of her life. At least, she thought, she had heard the news for several months. News of a terrible new nation, a group who they themselves were slaves at one time, only to revolt against their masters. Not only did they revolt, but they defeated their masters in combat that was being spoken of as supernatural. Here's the thing, their masters weren't just some other nations. It was the nation, the most powerful nation in the world. The largest and most powerful army led by a king, a pharaoh who many believed to a god himself. This new nation wasn't known for their warriors. They fought with pickaxes and pitchforks. They were shepherds, and they looked like it. They were said to smell like shepherds, dirty, hairy, field workers. It was said that this nation was so devastating in their victory that the Egyptians had given them gold on the way out of their slavery as they left the Nile region. This new nation of once slaves and now conquerors were heading in the direction of Rahab's city. She had heard from some of her traveling clientele that they were just on the other side of the Jordan River. Yesterday, she learned that they had now crossed the river and were just outside the city. This morning, one of her mistresses had said she had been told that they were in Shittim, right next to the city. Jericho, Rahab's city, was old. No one was quite sure how it came to be, and just how old, but as far as anyone could remember, the city had always been there. Generations upon generations had developed a defense system that was highlighted by the fact that the city walls were so large that it was said you could drive 2 chariots side by side on the tops of those walls. People had built entire homes inside the walls themselves. Rahab herself had even built her brothel in the city wall. That way, bored boys, lazy men, and traveling troublemakers could easily find her place of work. It wasn't that she was proud of her career. In fact, she thought of it like a new kind of master, enslaving her into a life that once again held little hope for something better. But what else could she do? How else could she provide for her family? Men only came into her place or work to take something from her, and what little hope she had would be stripped away each time. She prayed to the gods she knew of, but there seemed to be a sick, twisted cycle that those prayers and beliefs held to. In a mockery of life and death, even the characteristics of these gods were tormenting her with their identities of sex, power, prestige, individual success, money and fame. These targets to which they represented left the worshipper entertained, but empty. The songs sounded empty, just dragging beats that drove people to frenzy. The priests who wanted to look and act like everyone else were peddlers of the flesh. Some were even her best clients. As she looked out the window that morning, she gave a silent chuckle that didn't matter. She was a victim of fate, a side character in a story that she hoped would soon end. She wanted this new nation. What were they called? Hebrews. She wanted these Hebrews to maybe even come and take the city, killing everyone the way that they had been doing in the Canaanite desert. Maybe death would be her escape from this dark world of justifying evil. She was startled from her gaze by a young woman who was curiously asking her to help her with 2 new clients at the door. These men were very different from others who had entered. They weren't asking for services that all men asked of. They simply wanted information. As Rahab entered the front area to receive the guests, she noticed something strange about them. They smelled like livestock. They were unkempt, even dirty. Their skin was dark and worn like leather that had been living in the wilderness all their lives. There was nothing notable about them, except the small pieces of gold they carried that looked Egyptian.